All right, back in the basement again today for the first real update of my first complete week on the JuggernautAI app for an actual meet. So if you recall from last video, I signed up for a USAPL Rhode Island State Championship meet, which is gonna be held on May 1st, which at the time of this video is 92 days out, so roughly 3 months away. Now for these videos, again, I'd like to do weekly updates. I'd like to talk about maybe 1 or 2 topics just that resonated me throughout the course of the week or give you some insight into my training. However, what I'd also like to do is ask you guys for comments in the comment section below if there's anything specific you'd like me to talk about in regards to training, or maybe it's just a general equipment question that I can just bang out in one of these videos and not have to make a dedicated video on. So if you recall from the last video, I am training 4 days per week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I was able to hit all 4 training days this week. And one of the things that I'm really focusing on this week is just adapting back to a USAPL type training cycle. And I say that because the last couple of meets that I've done have been USPA, which use a squat bar, which use a deadlift bar. USAPL, especially the ones here in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, only really use those Eleiko powerlifting bars with really thin competition style collars. So really, really stiff, which I have missed a little bit. But I'm going to transition to only really trying to use power bars for this training. So even though I have a lot of fun toys here in the basement, I'm going to try to stick to just one type of barbell within reason. I'm gonna stray a little bit, especially on some accessories, but we'll get to that at some point in one of these videos. So I'm gonna walk you through number 1, day 1. Let's take a look. Some of the things that I had on here, and I should be pulling up some side stuff so you guys can actually see it too. So my main training, top set is comp squats, anywhere between 420 and 445. Usually what I do is when the Juggernaut system gives me a range of weights, obviously I'm gonna base that off of feel, but if I feel decent or even average in some instances, I'm always going to try to push that top weight, especially early on in the week. If this is like my day 3 or day 4 training, I might back it off a little bit, but my top set, I went for 445. I did it for 4 at an RPE 7. And it was definitely a different feeling from going back to low bar because if you recall, the last couple of weeks I've been doing a bunch of hypertrophy work, which has been a lot of high bar work, a lot of stuff with like specialty bars from the Transformer bar to the Duffalo bar. So using a 29mm barbell for a low bar squat is not something I've done in a while. So it was a little bit of an adjustment, but it felt good overall and I rated it at an RPE 7. And then I had a bunch of back off sets based off of that. Then moved on to feet up bench. And the interesting thing for me on day 1 with feet up bench is the first set called for 180 to 190. I actually went right in the middle at 185. My shoulder's been feeling a little bit weird lately, I think from that log pressing and trying to get it up without having a lot of practice, which is a terrible thing to say out loud. But it moved really, really well. And I think one of the things for me for feet up bench is because I don't have a lot of arch and I don't have a lot of leg drive anyway in competition style benching, feet up benching for me is really on par with what I do normally. So I started at 185, rated really low RPEs, and the app kept throwing more and more weight at me to the point where I jumped up to 225 on my last set and still rated it like an RPE 5.5. So gonna have to adapt that as time goes on, but that was a nice little bonus for me. Then finishing off with what I'm gonna show you for day 1 was 1-inch conventional deadlifts. It called for 3 sets of 2. Anywhere from 190 kilos to 200 kilos. So I will be mixing kilos in with this training just to get used to, again, that's what I'm gonna compete with. I decided to just go 200. I did a set of 2. It was a easy RPE, 6.5, bumped it up to 205. That felt even easier, which tells me I probably didn't do a good job warming up. And I ended at 220 for a set of 2 at still an RPE 7. So day 1 overall went really, really well. It does take a lot of time though, however, those are one of my longer days when I'm squatting, benching, and deadlifting and doing it for relatively heavy weight. On day 2, this day flew by because I didn't have a ton of actual compound work in here. I did have a lot of sets of extra wide bench press to start. I'll show you some clips here. I basically kept it at 225 the entire time. For me, I use my middle finger on the rings as is, and because I'm benching in this sore neck setup, which is only 41 inches wide and I have longer arms, it's tough for me to go any wider, so I could really only put my index finger, so it's like an inch wider, but still a little bit to get a different stimuli, and ended up doing 6 sets of 4, all at 225 pounds. And I think I kind of filmed pendlay rows just because I didn't have anything else to really show you. One of the comments and questions I get about the JuggernautAI app all the time is, what about back work? Is there enough back work? You can add back work in. I typically like to do some barbell movements, but also I like to mix in that Prime Fitness HLP single stack because it's an awesome piece. So I kind of struggle finding out which one I should do, I usually try to split it up throughout the course of the week. I'm not gonna show you guys accessories on this particular video. I think that's gonna be in a different update. This week, I just wanna kind of show you the basics of how I set things up, and then I'll go into accessories in a different video and talk about why I select those ones for me. So day 3, which was Thursday, came back, comp deadlift, had a top set. So similar to day 1 where you do a top set and then you have back offs. The top set suggested anywhere from 207.5 kg up to 217.5. And I kind of get that meathead math flowing where with kilos at least, especially if I can round up, I will. So I went with 220 because that's some nice even reds on either side. Worked out really well. Fairly easy RPE. Deadlifts have been feeling pretty good lately for me the last couple of months, but it is an exercise that potentially can build up a lot of fatigue. And I say that because if I take a look at my back off sets, which the first one was at 210, super simple RPE, the app told me I should do more. And again, it's gonna try to hit that sweet spot of like an RPE 7 or 8 for your back offs. But for me, because again, I potentially carry a lot of fatigue for deadlifts, and this is the start of a training cycle and I'm still kind of feeling it out, I decided to just keep my weight consistent at 210 for all of those back off sets. We then moved on to comp bench, and it was one of those things again where bench has just been feeling pretty good for me. I'm not sure if it's because the last training cycle that I ran, I was using a lot of chains on bench and I wasn't actually logging it, that it's kind of throwing me lighter weights here. But again, the app will adapt over time. And even though the first recommended set was anywhere between 92.5 to 100 kg, my last working set ended up being 110 at an RPE of 6. We then moved on to pause squats, so 4 sets of 3. This is where I use some meathead math again. Again, the app is going to adapt to what you do. So it suggested 365 to 390. I ended up doing 405, which felt really good, a low RPE. And again, the app adjusted to that, and on the next set, bumped up the weight significantly. I, for the most part, kept it pretty consistent, but by the last set, I still wasn't feeling very fatigued, so I jumped it up quite significantly, and things still moved really well. And again, as I go on through this training cycle, I'll kind of get a better feel and flow for how this goes, and I'll make smarter training decisions and jumps as the weeks go on. So that's gonna bring us to day 4, the last training day of the week, which for me was yesterday. Again, more squat, bench, and deadlift all in the same day. But in this case, the variations were a little bit lighter, where it wasn't overly taxing, so it didn't take me as long, so I could kind of superset some of these things in, which I do from time to time. So comp bench, 105 to 110. I went with 110, got all 4, RPE 7. Lots of back off sets, 7 sets of 4, really good. Comp deadlift, these were technique sets, so just focusing on technique. Used my meathead math to round up again, just did 200 kilos for sets of 4. And then finally finished off with some pause high bar squats. I ended up with 160 kilograms for sets of 2 at RPE 6. And I broke out that Rogue Olympic weightlifting bar, which is 28 millimeter bar, but I haven't been able to use it for anything else. So I figured high bar squats, Olympic style lifting, that made a lot of sense. So overall, the week went really well. In fact, I'll show you guys what happens when you finish a week. So I'm gonna go back to my dashboard. I've trained all 4 days. At the very bottom, you're gonna see a button for complete week. I'm gonna hit that. It's gonna ask you about your progression. How did it go? To be honest, on average, I keep everything at a 3. I don't really mess with this. I just keep the basic progression built in. But if I felt like the weights were super light and I needed more, I probably would put everything at a 4, potentially a 5. If I felt like the week really kicked my butt, I'd put a 2, maybe a 1. If you want to modify your program, you can at this point. What that's going to allow you to do is either change your competition lifting styles. So if you want to switch from conventional to sumo, high bar to low bar, maybe the type of bench you do from narrow to medium to wide, your training days or your weaknesses, you can do that. I am not going to modify my program because I'm going to trust in what the app tells me, and I'm going to hit complete my week. And then what it's gonna do is gonna give me my next week up, and I'll get that started in the following Monday and keep you guys posted. Now, it might be a little bit of a condensed week. I have some stuff in my personal life which is gonna prevent me from training the last half of next week and the first half of the following week. I'll probably touch upon that in the video. But again, leave comments below to hear what you want me to talk about. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.